Hello friends, welcome to Universe of Naruto X. If you love Naruto what if stories and anime explanations, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now let's begin today's story. They were in shock of what had happened. Na was holding his head from the last rampaging cussing and threatening to Yuya had just gone through. Please not so loud to Yuya-chan. It really isn't necessary to shout that much. Well, you're the one who up and got us so drunk. Look what happened. We ended up to Yuya began to curse Naruto out again. She seemed to enjoy making Naruto suffer. It wasn't entirely his fault anyways. Partly it was her fault that she cussed so much and a bar would be the only place she could cuss. Well, if you would clean your language up, I would have taken you to dinner. Na retorted as he looked over at the redhead and glared. She was always seemed to argue with Na, but it was her strange way of showing that she loved him. She didn't fight with anyone else, just Na. He seemed to be special. Tuya sat up and looked at Naruto, giving him a strange look. It wasn't her normal pissed off expression. It was almost a lustful look. She then grabbed him by the back of the head and kissed him passionately. Na went wide-eyed by this action since he hadn't been expecting that. Apparently, Tuya liked conflict. She broke the kiss for a moment and looked at him smiling in a seductive manner. I've been waiting for you to talk back to me. I can clean my language up if I wanted, but I was waiting to see you have what it takes to talk back to me. Tuya said as she reached down under the covers and grabbed hold of Naruto's balls and smirked. You sure have the balls to talk back to me. That's good cause the size matches your balsiness. Goodness warning. You have been warned. Na turned bright red in the face. This was getting freaky. He had no idea Tuya was one of those girls who liked conflict. He apparently thought the girl was just vulgar and foul-mouthed. He never thought she could talk decently. His embarrassment deepened as he found himself becoming erect from her rubbing his balls. He hadn't expected that to happen. Oh, so you're as turned on by this as I am, she lustfully said as she moved her hand to his hardening erection. She placed her delicate fingers around the shaft and began to pump it lightly. She smirked as she looked at him, become shocked by her actions. It would seem she was a bit impulsive. She then removed her hand, sitting up slowly as she looked at him with a grin on her face. I don't remember last night, so how about we see if it was worth it? So Naruto can me? Na shrugged. It would seem he really had no choice in the matter. He reached his hands upward and cupped her lightly. Sure, she didn't have big like Hanata, but they were just the right size. He squeezed to Yuya's right lightly as he laid her down on the bed. He leaned down and extended his tongue and ran it up the redhead's neck and grinned when he saw her become flush with excitement. His right hand drifted downward and rested on the redhead's thigh and he caressed it lightly as he kissed her neck softly. Tuya let out a low-pitched moan from the stimulation she was receiving. Na spread to Yuya's legs open and rubbed the head of his member against her wet entrance. He eased himself into her slowly. He smiled when he heard her moan out. Tuya wrapped her arms around Naruto's neck as she nuzzled her face into his neck. That's when Naruto began to roll his hips forward, thrusting his length into her. She threw her head back and let out a high-pitched moan. She then lifted her head up and kissed him lustfully. As she parted the kiss, they sucked lightly on his lower lip. It was amazing that this tender act was all it took to get her to shut up some. Oh. Na-kunin, she moaned out as she held fast to Na. She closed her eyes as Naruto began to thrust his hips faster, causing him to move deeper inside of her. He moved his hands behind her and held tightly to her shoulders as he intensified his thrusts. He bit down on the girl's shoulder, giving himself into the passion he was feeling. Tuya was on the verge of screaming like a banshee. She was pressing herself against Na. She then screamed out loudly in passion as an earth-shattering orgasm washed over her. She moaned vulgarly as Naruto sped up the movement of his hips as he was on the verge of coming. He continued to roll his hips at a feverish pace as he was on the verge of coming. Then with one last thrust, he pushed himself completely into his red-haired lover and came. He ejaculated, pumping his hot cum into her. He then slumped over on top of her, breathing heavily. Was it good for you? The blonde asked with a grin. Goodness has ended. All prudish people can continue reading now. He rolled over and stared at the ceiling for a moment before closing his eyes. He was startled somewhat when the redhead snuggled up against him. He then knew he wasn't hallucinating when the girl punched him in the arm. I had no idea you were packing, __, and if I end up pregnant, you will marry me. She quickly threatened the blonde before kissing him softly. Na grinned sheepishly only because he didn't like the tone she was using. It sounded more like a blackmail threat than a do the right thing tone. Naruto sighed, knowing this was another complication in his life. As if things couldn't get more insane, Naruto knew they probably would. After Naruto had recovered, Naruto headed out the front door of Tuya's apartment. He was whistling calmly. He had no fear whatsoever. Of course, it was around noon now, which meant he could go get lunch. He was walking along. His whistling had turned into humming when an unexpected occurrence popped up. The Hyuga Aries, normally shy and timid, grabbed hold of Naruto's arm. Naruto's face turned bright red when he felt her ample push against his arm. He immediately began to fidget like she always did. This was a nerve-wracking situation. He couldn't keep the girls off him. He wondered why Hinata was being so bold. Maybe the thought of not having to be so worried around him gave her courage. Who knows? Narokana made you some lunch. IWW was hoping that we could have lunch together. The Hyuga Aries was still timid around the boy she had been in love with since Kami knows when she then began to fidget and the two stood there fidgeting. Someone would have to break the silence. It was considered a sign of the end times for Naruto to be quiet without him eating ramen. Over the years, Naruto had witnessed as Hinata went from being the cute girl who couldn't talk to him without fainting to being a beautiful girl who couldn't talk to him without fainting. He smiled cheerfully at her and kissed her cheek. He chuckled when he saw her face turn red in slow motion. Thanks, Hinata-chan. I'm really hungry. He said this with the ever-present smile he was known for, but unlike the one he had over the years, it was genuine. Are all right. See, come on. And nah. Hinata pulled on Naruto's arm, leading him off towards the Hyuga compound. Na simply acted as Hinata lead him to the Hyuga compound. Na was wondering if this sudden boldness probably has something to do with the fact that Hinata and Ino were fast becoming friends. The thought of Ino influencing Hinata made Naro feel like someone just walked over his grave. Of course, it wouldn't hurt for Hinata to be less shy and timid. In fact, it drove Na crazy whenever the girl stuttered. Yet, her shy nature is what made her attractive. She was a nice contrast to the other women in the Naruto's life. In fact, if Naruto wasn't so certain that Hiashi would have killed him, he probably would have asked Hinata out on a date. Naruto found himself sitting at the end of a table. He half expected her family to be there to make judgments. He had, of course, been surprised by the meal Hinata had prepared. He simply blinked at what was in front of him. It amazed him that sweet girl he knew was such a talented cook. He didn't expect such a feast from her. Ramen, steak, tempura, and aniri for dessert. Na simply stared at the steak. He never saw it before. Hinata-chan, you really didn't have to do that much for me. Naruto shyly said he just expected a meal of ramen. Naruto, in another week we will be husbander and in www wifes so IW want to make SS sure you are W welfed. Hinata blushed as she finished that sentence. She then began her famous fidgeting as she looked at Na. She had her own food set in front of her, though her portions were much smaller than Naruto's. She smiled sweetly as she waited for Na to begin eating. She knew there was a risk with cooking him something he isn't used to. Na carefully cut into the steak. He had never had a steak, mostly because this was considered rich people food. He really never had the money to buy it, so he was going to enjoy it. He then chewed the meat. It amazed him simply because he had no idea steak was that good. Perhaps there were other foods beside ramen that were delicious. Wow, Hinata-chan, your cooking is great. Na managed to say though almost muffled by him devouring the food. Naruto and Naruto-kun, she replied quietly as she quietly ate her meal. She was relieved that Naruto loved the meal, but she waited for him to try the ramen. She had her fair share of competition in the ramen area since she had heard Haku has a recipe and she had heard that Naruto was engaged to a yam. Eikyu and Ikyaku was the best ramen stand in the village. In truth, Naruto had two types of women in his life, the anti-ramen establishment and the make Naruto happy establishment. Ino was of course the leader of the anti-ramen group due to the fact she thought it was fattening and unhealthy. Hinata's eyes lit up with joy when Naruto began to eat the ramen she had prepared with great enjoyment. It was all she could have asked for. She didn't want her ramen to be better, but that it made Naruto happy. Na found that he really enjoyed the tempura. For some reason, he liked the way deep-fried food tasted. It was after all the male factor. It was a known fact that guys liked greasy food. Eventually, Emperor impressed and Naruto-kun. Why you ate everything? Hinata gasped in amazement as she held her hands to her mouth. She hadn't expected Naruto to eat all that, including the extra she had prepared. Of course, Naruto had eaten way too much. He was laying on back groaning. Too much food, he quietly muttered as he looked at the ceiling. At this rate, he were going to be as fat or big-boned as Choji. Naruto-kun, why you didn't really have to eat all of it? Hinata spoke with a concerned look on her face as she looked at Naruto. He was known to overdo it sometimes. Needless, Hinata wasn't surprised. She then gave him a digestive aid since she didn't want to see him in such discomfort, even if it was his entire fault. Once Naruto was feeling better, he sat up and pulled Hinata into a hug. Immediately, her face turned bright red. She was shocked by this. She just blushed since she wasn't quite used to Na showing her affection. I love you Narok, __, she finally managed to say it, though she felt like fainting when she finished the sentence. I know, Hinata-chan, I somehow always knew, but you always fainted when I tried to talk to you. Naruto softly replied as he held the Evashi girl close. He felt her jump in shock and expected he had come to know her mannerisms. Don't be so jumpy, Hinata-chan. Hi Naruto-kun, the white-eyed Hinata meekly replied to her fiancé. She looked up into his vibrant blue eyes timidly. Her heart felt like it was beating 1,000 times a minute. She would probably always stutter. It's what made her unique, but hopefully she would get over the habit of fainting all the time. I will try to stop fainting all the time. And Naruto, __, thanks. It's kind of hard to talk to you when you faint all the time. Na cheerfully said with a grin on his face. He then kissed her ever so lightly and stopped there since he expected her to freeze when he kissed her. The pale princess was turning the most interesting shade of red from the attention she was receiving from her first and only crush across town. Now, which puppy will Nakan just melt over? Hana Inuka was examining puppies from a litter of puppies. She was planning to win the boy over with a puppy. Guys usually do that with girls, so who says a girl can't do the same? She then spotted a tan and black colored puppy and smiled. You seriously think you have a chance, sis? I don't see why all you girls are crazy about him. Ha muttered quietly. He was glad he finally had a reprieve from Bridezilla attacks. At least until Hyuga Bridezilla struck. Then again, Hinata is normally quiet. She couldn't be as horrible as Ino was. Or could she? Shut up, Ka. You're just jealous because Hinata never saw you that way. Hana smirked as she picked up the puppy, which was probably the most adorable one of the litter. Ka simply glared. He didn't like admitting he lost to Na, even if the two had become friends. It drove him crazy that Na had turned out to be such a pimp. But maybe Ka could score some of the overflow girls. It couldn't hurt to ask Naruto to send a few Ka's way. Right now, if you will excuse me, I have to go track Naruto down. Hana then abruptly left with the small puppy in her arms. Ka's eye twitched as he fell into a chair. This was beyond crazy. It was just like the days of the academy almost, except Naruto had become God's gift to women. Needless to say, Ka was quite jealous. The plotting continues. Naruto had been leaving Hyuga compound when it happened. He felt a cold chill run down his spine. He felt killing intent. No, it was more frightening than that girlfriend intent. The very thing Na justly feared, the unwanted attention of girls. He slowly turned to look at who was behind him, and he petrifies. Long dark hair with a girly ribbon. It was Keichin. Naruto, __, the dark-haired girl called out as she latched onto Naruto's arm. He only grumbled since he needed at least 10 minutes alone from the women. Is that so much to ask? A little time to be alone and think. Not that it was so bad getting affection from Chin. She was quite the looker, and she always was. Yes, Chan. Naruto sighed softly. He was exhausted from everything today. He needed a nap. Before he could start to complain he was being pulled away by the dark-haired girl, he groaned in exasperation. Relax, I'm just taking you somewhere so you can rest for a moment before Bridezilla gets a hold of you again, Chin calmly explained as she led Na off to some place the army of girls would never think to look for Na, her apartment. Unlike some of the women, Chin was a bit more patient. After all, Naruto was someone she had her eye on for a while. So tired, so very tired, Naruto mumbled quietly. It was mostly his fault anyway, considering who he had been doing lately. Chin had helped him into her apartment and helped him lay down on the couch. She could only imagine how exhausted the normally energetic Na was. Naruto's head was resting in Chin's lap, not like he could complain, and all he knew was Chin was going to allow him to rest. When I first met you, I just thought you were a noisy, obnoxious, hyperactive rut. The dark-haired beauty began as she stroked Naruto's head affectionately, trying to get him relaxed so he could sleep. But when you dragged me out of that hospital room and hid me in your old apartment, at first, I was upset, but when it turned out you saved me. I know, Na mumbled as looked up at the dark-haired girl. She was definitely calmer than Tuya, which was good for Na. The calm ones balanced out the psychopaths, and Na surely attracted the psychopaths. Na felt his eyes growing heavy. This is nice. Na then gave into the comfort and drifted into a nap. There you go, Narokan. Just rest. I'll keep you safe from the crazy girls. Kin smiled and relaxed, letting Na rest. It was her little tactic to make Na fall for her. She smiled slightly since she could understand that Na needed some time away from the insanity. No more dating for you. Ino will kill you if you don't show up for the wedding tomorrow. And I won't get my chance to date you if she does that. Of course, out in the village, there were girls stalking the streets looking for the knucklehead turned god's gift to Kunoichi. A cute medic nin wearing a black kimono, a wind mistress, a pink-haired beauty, a veterinarian with a puppy, and a psychopathic bride. Naruto was lucky took him to the one place the lunatics would think to look. Naruto was safely tucked away, and Chin wasn't going to let anything bad happen to Naruto for now. Chin was a bit selfish like that, but what did you expect? Naruto was the most desired man in the village. It came with the territory, and Naruto couldn't do anything to stop it until he said no more, and he was a glutton for pain. For now, the dates would have to wait. He was getting married tomorrow, and that was something to make sure to stay on top of. Na had been able to rest for a few hours in the comfort that Chin had offered him. He then opened his eyes abruptly and sat up as he remembered he had a bachelor party to attend. Na, you aren't going anywhere. Chin shouted out as she held Naruto fast, preventing him from escaping. But bachelor party, Na wed since he had hoped to go to the stripper-free bachelor party. The girl shot him a stern look and pointed to poster of Ino that Ino had made to strike fear into Na. It featured a grouchy-looking Ino cracking her knuckles with the words, "Don't be late," in large letters. She made that poster and put it over the village in case you got ideas about partying tonight and showing up late for the wedding. She will destroy us all if you're late. Chin explained while she exclaimed about it. Of course, Naruto cringed some since he knew his bride-to-be would rampage if he was late. I never thought about it that way. Na didn't want to see Ino go berserk if he didn't show up. He wanted to avoid that at all costs. So, he settled down on the couch. He figured the bachelor party could do well without him. I bet you don't recognize this place anymore. Chin began for her apartment was in fact the apartment where Naruto had lived for a portion of his life until Haku and Zabuza had come to live in the village. It had indeed been changed in the years since he had lived there. Of course, it was the feminine touch from Chin that made it much better. At first, it was hard getting used to life in the village, but I got used to the fact that daily life wasn't a test. Of course, some villagers didn't like me at first because I was from Odoga, but you helped me through those road times when you came and helped me with my chores when you had free time. Naruto nodded his head and smiled softly at the dark-haired girl. It was true he took care of because he took it upon himself to help other people. He wanted to be the Hokage after all, and it was practice for him. It never dawned on him back then that Chin may have had feeling for him, but when her personality became more distant after he started to date Ino, he still had no idea that the girl was fond of him, but that was quickly clarified when the girl moved and straddled Naruto's lap, looking him dead in the eyes. I still haven't thanked you for helping me out. Chin smiled softly and leaned forward, kissing Na softly on the lips. He didn't fight it, though he had come to terms with the fact he somehow became the pimpage. He simply wrapped his arms around the girl as he returned the kiss softly, but that's when a knocking on the door was heard and the moment was killed. From the other side of the door, barking was heard, which meant Hana had somehow managed to track down Na. Open up, Chin. I know you have Na. I'm not going to molest him or anything. I just want to give him a puppy, Hana said through the door. Of course, Na sighed in grief because a perfect moment was spoiled. Chin stood to her feet and walked to the door and looked through the peephole to make sure Hana was truthful on the matter. Sure enough, she was holding a puppy. Sochin opened the door to let Hana in. Here you go, Naruto-kun. I wanted you to have the pick of the litter. He reminds me of you. Ambitious and energetic. She smiled sweetly as she handed Naruto the little puppy. The puppy immediately licked Naruto's cheek, causing Naruto to chuckle. Hana smiled and walked back to the door, keeping her word. And if Bridezilla tells you, you can't keep him. Tell me, I will give her a piece of my mind. Hana smiled as she walked out the door, leaving Na to blink some as he looked at the puppy. What should I name you? How about Kamaboko? Na grinned and Kin giggled since she thought it was funny how his mind was always fixated on ramen. The puppy just wagged its tail and yipped at Naruto happily. Nakan, you could give him a better name than that. Give him a name that doesn't sound like you were hungry. Chin knew Naruto was probably hungry, so she walked off to the kitchen and began to prepare some instant ramen. One of the finer things in life that Na got her indoctrinated, too. Na was busy playing with the puppy. It was a total guy thing. Every guy wanted a puppy at some point. It was the perfect girl magnet, too. He rubbed his chin in thought as he looked at the pup. I'll just call Yaimaru. Na smiled and pet the pup's head. That is a better name, Naruto-kun. Chin called out as she brought some instant ramen over to Na. It would also seem that all the women in his life would prevent him from doing stupid things, but that comes with every girl. They make sure men don't do something foolish. The two began to eat their instant ramen, though it wasn't as good as Haku or Ikyaku's ramen. But it was instant, and that was good enough as he inhaled it. Eventually, Naruto finished his ramen. He had learned to slow down his eating since it was bad manners. I better get going, Kaichin-chan. I have to get a good night's rest. Naruto yawned out as he stood up with Tamaru fast asleep in his arms. He of course used Henge to transform into a disguise that would allow him to get home fast. The form he chose was that of the guy girls didn't want to chase anymore. Sasaki Uchiha. Now remember, act emo, act like you're better than everyone and we can get home with ease. Na told himself mentally as he began to walk out the door. Na made his trek home with no problem, and when he reached the front door, he released the transformation and grinned walking inside. Of course, once he got inside, there was a squeal from Haku at the puppy he was holding. It's so cute. Haku clasped her hands together and looked at the puppy Naruto was holding. The pup quirked one of its ears as Naruto raised one of his eyebrows. Haku, I never saw this side of you. It's so well girly, Naruto bluntly said as Haku blushed deep crimson since she had never acted so girly ever. Na handed the puppy over to her so she could hold it since she thought it was so cute. His name is Tamaru. So cute. Haku squealed yet again as she cuddled the puppy as she held it. Naru just blinked at the peculiar way his roommate turned girlfriend was acting. He shrugged it off and walked to his room and crawled into bed. Tomorrow he was getting married, so he had to get some rest. The next morning, Naruto fell out of his bed as it had been established he hated morning. He dragged himself to the bathroom and knocked this time. He looked down the hall and saw Haku playing with Tamaru. So, he walked into the bathroom and took care of getting cleaned up. He didn't have to exactly leave for the place the wedding was taking place for a few hours. So, how was he going to kill the time? Training was a question. Eating ramen, too. What could he do? What could he do? His eyes were wandering over to Haku every time he was trying to think of something. Erosen has infected me with Lyra's thoughts. Na began to mentally scream at himself. Then in the mindscape of Na. Come on, Kit. You know you want to have your way with her. The Kayabi roared out as Na began to twitch his right eye. He was getting tired of this overly horny fox telling him to do things. Shut up, you perverted fox. Ino would kill me if I got laid before the wedding. Na responded as he glared at the fox. He was getting tired of the constant perversion from every direction. Back in reality, I'm so bored. How am I going to kill 2 hours? Na yelled in frustration as he held onto his head. Haku began to grin. She had a few ideas how the two of them could kill a few hours. Of course, Na began to feel a chill down his spine. He didn't feel comforted by that grin. Oh, Naruto-kun, I know how we can kill some time. It's something I've been wanting for a while. She grabbed hold of Naruto's arm and pulled him into her room. No, Na cried, but it was too late. There was no escaping the clutches of the beautiful young woman he lived with. 1.5 hours later. Oh yeah, Na and Haku were lying in bed next to each other. Na was staring at the ceiling with a stupid grin on his face. Hey, I may end up dead, but at least I'll be happy, Na replied. For someone who didn't like the idea in the first place, he felt mighty proud of himself. Haku snuggled close to Na. She smiled contentedly as if she had fulfilled her wildest dreams. Naruto-kun, you're an animal, Haku quietly commented, looking a bit flush from the activity. But the moment was quickly over as Na saw what time it was and rushed to the bathroom to clean up. He couldn't very well show up smelling like he just had. Haku sighed and stared at the ceiling. She didn't like that the moment was over. Oh well, I'll get more time with you at some point. Naruto__. Later at the ceremony location, Na was now dressed in his clan robes, which had the same spiral design that his other outfits had. Of course, it was orange with black haka. He was not quite used to the way these clothes felt. He of course still had a stupid grin on his face. Not the famous one. The one that basically just said he got laid. Nah, you have this stupid grin on your face. You look like you did. Jiraiya couldn't have been more proud of his student. Of course, pride was placed in the wrong place. But I suggest you not grin like that. Women tend to not like it if you slept with someone else on your wedding day. Na nodded his head and shifted it into his usual grin, which wouldn't get him killed. He looked out into the clearing, seeing the people file in slowly. He was amazed at how many people were showing up. Wow, a lot of people. Good thing we didn't write our own vows. I couldn't recite that stuff in front of all these people. Nah, let's hope this wedding doesn't get too loud or insane. Then again, I'm full rested, Gar commented, being the ever-pleasant cage that he was known to be. Na had to slap himself though since he was starting to get nervous, and who would blame him? He was about to get married. Calm down, kid. Nothing is going to go wrong. Bridezilla made sure everything was going to go as planned. Shikamaru calmly said as he stepped forward, the troublesome woman is making sure you don't run away. So I have to use my clan's jutsu to hold you in place if you try to run away. At which point we tie you up and the wedding goes on as planned. But Na, why do you like these troublesome women? I don't know. I guess they have something I like. They keep me on my toes and they keep me in line. Na grinned some, about ready to walk out to the altar where he was supposed to wait. Bad news, Sununit. Sama got drunk, Shazan declared as she ran up to the front of the area. Fortunately, Jiraiya was there to do the ceremony. Question is, would they let him? I can do it, Jiraiya declared as he walked out and stood at the altar where Sununit would be. And everyone was frightened, very frightened. There were children present, for crying out loud. Relax. There is a time and place for perversions. Today isn't one of those times. Na decided to take his place in front of the altar and decided it was time to get things started. That's when the traditional wedding march began to play, and first Sakura walked out and took her spot off to the side. Then the shy Hinata, Gar and Shikamaru were standing beside Naruto. And then that's when Kunoichi walked in, leading his daughter up to the front. It almost looked as if he was going to cry. You may be seated. Jiraiya spoke and everyone took their seats. This was probably the most joyous occasion in all of Konoha in some time. The next Hokage was getting married and Sununit was passed out in the back. We are here to observe as Naruto Uzumaki and Inino Yamanaka begin the great journey of their lives. Although this will be the first step in a much more perilous journey for Na. We look on in admiration for their commitment for one another. Now for the exchanging of vows. Jiraiya finished the opening sermon deal and pointed to Na. He wasn't the kind to make a happy day into a drawn-out showboating occasion. I, Naruto Uzumaki, take Ino Yamanaka to be my loving wife, in sickness and in health. Till death do us part, Naruto began as he gazed longingly at Ino as he held her hands in his. The people witnessing this were all shocked to say the least, since they never expected Naruto to conduct himself seriously. For all the days we shall be together, I shall love you, my partner and my wife. I will always love you now and forevermore. Jiraiya then pointed to Ino since it was her turn to speak her vows. It was amazing that Jiraiya had conducted himself seriously since he was a pervert. They had all expected him to open up with something about how Naruto is going to live out every man's fantasy. I, Ino Yamanaka, take Naruto Uzumaki to be my loving husband in sickness and in health till death do his part. For all our days, not matter how hard they be, I shall always love you, my partner and my husband. Now and forevermore, Ino smiled happily at Na as she finished speaking her vows, though she said hers slightly different. She was so happy she didn't seem to take notice that her bridesmaids were ogling Naruto. Talk about unusual weddings. Work together as shinobi and kunoichi, but more importantly as husband and wife. It is only through the partnership of husband and wife that you two can achieve true harmony. Now if anyone has any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace. Jiraiya spoke. No one did but one Sasuke Uchiha who was raising his hand. Besides Sasuke Uchiha who was just jealous. Jiraiya interjected and since there were no further objections. If there are no further objections by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Na and Ino just did that, kissing each other passionately, but not deeply. It wasn't vulgar either. It was just a simple passionate kiss between husband and wife. Of course, shinobi didn't exchange rings when they got married since they got in the way of the job. The two broke from their kiss, smiling happily, and Jiraiya turned them to face the well-wishers. I present Naruto and Inoki. And then the Toad Sage pushed the two newlyweds forward, sending them down the aisle as people cheered. Once outside, all the women gathered up, but it was a competition between the women that wanted to be the next bride of Na that gathered. Ino turned around and threw her bouquet over her shoulders. Na and the other guys just winced at the horror that is women fighting over the wedding bouquet. Ouch. That's going to leave a mark. Na yelled as he saw Sakura punch a girl for trying to grab the bouquet, but eventually it was decided. The winner of the bouquet toss by sheer will was Haku. I did not see that happening. If I can have your attention, please everyone. We will be gathering at the Shōai dining hall for the reception. Naruto called out as he and Ino headed off ahead of everyone else. But the second round of the bouquet obtaining contest was beginning. Haku had to maintain ownership of the bouquet for a bit longer before she was the real winner. This is to determine who was deserving of Naruto. More called out one of the girls as the fight began. Anew at the dining hall. You actually got me some ramen for the reception. I never expected you to do that for me, Ino. Na said with a smile. Ino smiled in return despite her hate of the fattening food. She liked Naruto to be happy. If serving noodles was the way to do it, she got off easy. Only for you, Naruto, __. Ino smiled softly at her husband as they walked to their table and sat down. The feast, of course, was an incredible one, but they couldn't start till the guests arrived. The champion of the bouquet toss was decided. Man, that was hilarious. Who knew Hinata could fight like that? She must really want to marry Naruto or something. Ka called out as he laughed while they walked into the dining hall. Hinata wasn't far behind as she staggered in looking battle-worn. She held up the bouquet like a victorious conqueror until she was tackled by Hana who took it away. The contest begins anew. Hey shouted as they watched the women start fighting over the bouquet again. But it quickly ended when Tuya snatched it from Hana. No one dared to try and take the bouquet away from a temperamental redhead. No one except Tamari. Okay, that's enough of the bouquet fight. Naruto shouted to the girls as Anko leapt in and took the bouquet away. Enko quickly lost it to Karani who used genjutsu and she lost it to Shazen. Naruto's eye twitched as he watched the contest continue on. Apparently, they were deciding still. But it all ended when a battle-scarred Hinata and Haku ended up taking the bouquet from Shizen at the same time. The bouquet was torn in half. Okay, it's over now. I shall marry Naruto-kun next, Hinata said as she caught her breath before she noticed Haku had the other half. That's enough, girls. It's not that important. You will all get to marry me at some point, Naruto calmly explained as the girls watched each other as if paranoid. Na sighed some. It was quite the scene, but now they could eat. A bit later, Naruto had eaten his fair share of food and was sighing contently. That's when Tuya walked up to the table. Naruto wondered what she had wanted. He could only imagine the horror she was about to unleash upon him. "Na, I'm pregnant," the redhead blurted out, and Na just became a pillar of stone at the 3 words. Na then fall face first right into a piece of wedding cake. "Gonna be a daddy," he mumbled out as he was still in shock. He had no idea that this would happen. He really had no idea. And that's when Ino grabbed him by the ear. "Sweetie, were cheating on me before you were told to marry several women?" Ino asked as she twisted his ear. "No." "Ah." Na cried out in pain as his wife twisted his ear. "Actually, Bimbo, it all happened 2 nights ago. We went drinking and the next morning we were in bed together and he will marry me." Tuya was a very grouchy woman. Must be the hormones. Then again, she might just be acting like Tuya. Okay then, but he better not make a habit of this. Ino shouted at her husband who simply looked up through the skylight. "Kami, you're a woman, aren't you?" An expected response considering the insanity he was subjugated to. The day after, Na mumbled as he tried to get out of bed, but he was immediately pulled back down by his wife. "Going somewhere, dear," the blonde-haired beauty venomously said as she pulled Na back into the bed. He sighed in exasperation as he looked at his wife. "No more snoo. The mind is willing, but the body is tired and unwilling." Naruto wed it was understandable that he wasn't up to performing after a whole night of consummating the marriage. "Oh. What happened to the endless stamina you used to have?" Ino smirked as she poked his chest before kissing him softly. She then giggled some as she slipped out of the bed, pulling on a rope. "I wasn't going to make you do any more, but I'm not letting you out of the house today. You are on hiatus from your mission for today." She sassily finished as she crossed her arms over her chest. "Yes, my love," Na said in fear of his wife. He then lay fully on his back and stared at the ceiling for a moment. Ino then walked off quietly. Soon enough, he smelled the aroma of food being cooked in the kitchen and his stomach actually twisted in fear. Now Ino was a beautiful woman and all but her cooking was little to be desired. It was so bad Na could hardly choke it down. He clutched his stomach in loathing of the thought of eating at cooking. "No choice but to run," Na fearfully said as he jumped to his feet and quickly got dressed. He decided to avoid the fate worse than death and began to sneak through the large mansion. He had to reach the back where he could sneak out one of the windows. He was about there when there it was a pair of pale blue eyes narrowed and glaring with animosity at him. A great amount of killing intent was being exuded. "Going somewhere," Koido Ino hissed as she clenched her fist. She noticed Naruto looking a bit sheepish as he backed up in fear. His right eye twitched. He was quickly trying to think of an excuse that would be plausible and not get him hurt. "It's not that you're a bad cook. Just cooking isn't one of your strengths. You're best at boti, floral arrangements, and being a regular freak in bed. But your cooking isn't that good," Naruto timidly said as he fidgeted some. Then he saw his wife look down as veins popped out of her forehead. "Oh, this isn't going to end well," he quickly thought. Meanwhile, as passers-by walked past the compound, they all heard something that only signified the first incident of newlyweds. The first fight of a married couple. "Na, are you two? Whack. A tie." Sometime later, Na was sitting at the dinner table, eyeing the breakfast his wife prepared for him. He poked it quietly with his chopsticks. He had never seen an omelette like this. It was thin and folded over with vegetables, meat, and cheese inside. Na couldn't do much with his chopsticks, so he was about to try and eat it with his bare hands. "It isn't going to kill you, Na. And it might help to use a fork and knife." Ino scolded her uncouth husband, who was about to try and eat it with his hands. Na grumbled and cut off a small piece. He was slowly bringing the piece of food to his mouth. He found that it was something Ino didn't scorch or somehow ruin. Kami be praised. Ino could cook something. Na took another bite just to make sure it wasn't just a fluke. Sure enough, it was actually good. Na began to practically inhale the omelette. Soon, he was looking at an empty plate, and he whimpered. "You honestly thought what you had before was my true cooking ability?" Ino slightly said as she ruffled her husband's hair. "Elsewhere, namely outside the compound. She can't keep my Haku began but stopped when she was glared at by the Hyuga heiress the medic Nin Sakura and Tayuya. She quickly cleared her throat, realizing that was the worst choice of words. I mean, our Naruto-kun. Kaku turned her attention back to the mansion. A vein was about to pop out of her forehead when she saw Taimaru scratching at the front door. Oh no, she didn't. A fierce voice called out as a very irritated Hana walked up. She stormed right up to the front door and kicked it in. She was about to give Ino a piece of her mind. Making such a sweet puppy as Taimaru stay outside was just wrong. The other three girls simply waited for all hell to break loose. And sure enough, the bickering commenced. Okay, go, Haku commanded as the three girls rushed to the mansion. The three girls rushed in. Once inside, the three were in shock as there was no Naruto in sight and there were others who were plotting to steal Naruto away. Shazan, Karani, and Anko to be precise. This is awkward, Karani coldly commented as the group of girls collided in the dining room. They then turned their attention to where Naruto was, only to find a Na plushie sitting in the chair. All 8 of the women twitched in anger that Na ran away like that. Naruto was a good 24 blocks away when the shout echoed out from his mansion that told him they knew he was gone. And as if on cue, he heard them all shout in unison as he was far enough away to escape their wrath. Uzumaki, Na, get your back here right now. Na, who had Taimaru in his arms, made a run for it. He ran swiftly down the street and skidded to a stop, seeing Gar and Tamari. Oh, me sideways. He couldn't get one day to himself. Naruto hung his head in defeat. Naruto, why are you avoiding my sister? Gar coldly asked as he approached Naruto, who was by this point twitching in fear of Gar. He was picturing it in his head, him being bound in sand by Gar or something worse. I just haven't had the chance. I've been Yano forced on dates with other girls, getting married, trying to find a moment's rest. Naruto laughed nervously and raised his hands up quietly, waving them in defense. 5-minute head start before you force me to marry Tamari, even if I love her. Gar nodded slowly, and Naruto ran like he never ran before. He didn't need to get married the day after he got married. Na soon found himself being grabbed and pulled into an alley. He couldn't see who his savior was, but was thankful she was leading him to safety. Eventually, they were far enough away from the insanity that Naruto could breathe safely. He then raised his head and saw who his savior was and blinked in amazement. Long blonde hair tied back neatly and the slanted eyes. It was none other than Yugo. Why did you save me from the crazy women? Naruto asked as he caught his breath. He didn't quite trust this woman. She was cold and hateful. Just then, his suspicions were justified when she pulled out a cane, ready to stab him. She lunged forward, and Naruto dodged the cane, missed his heart and went right through his hand. He winced and pulled the knife out of his hand and dropped it to the ground, looking at the woman angrily. He held his hand up for her to see, hoping she would come to realization with what she was dealing with. Her jaw hung wide in shock as she witnessed the wound healing slowly. You're not human, she shouted as she took a step back. She didn't know why the Rackage gave her the mission at first, but now it was becoming all too clear. Send a monster to kill a monster. She pulled out another kwani, ready to strike him again, but he was too quick and grabbed hold of her wrist and pressed her against a wall. She then saw a look in his eyes. It was not too unlike the look she had in her eyes for so long. A look of loneliness. It hurts, doesn't it? She quietly said as she looked at him quietly, letting go of her cane. Even if Na had so many friends now, the look of loneliness remained. The years of torment couldn't be erased in just a few years. They would remain with him forever. Na nodded his head quietly as he looked at her. You know, you don't have to be alone anymore, Yugo-chan. You have me. We are after all engaged. Na replied as he slid his hand down from her wrist to her hand, lacing his fingers with hers. Na, she whispered quietly. She was becoming somewhat less hostile in his presence. She found his presence to be warm, not a threat to her in the least. She dropped her arms quietly, and then she gasped in shock when she was pulled into his arms in a gentle embrace. Tears were welling in her eyes. She had never been held in her life. She had a hard life like any Jinchuriki. I know what it's like, Yu-Gi-Oh-chan. The years of loneliness, they don't go away. Na spoke softly as he rested his head against hers quietly. She began to sob quietly, and Naruto continued to hold her quietly. He stroked her head as he comforted her. She dropped all the walls she had put up over the years and clung tightly to Naruto as she cried in his arms. She was no longer afraid to be true to herself and revealed that she was just a scared girl. Naruto wiped the tears from her eyes and smiled softly at her. The girl timidly smiled for what seemed like the first time to her. Never let people tell you what you are. What you contain isn't who you are. Who you are is who you are, you know. Na tried his best at giving her a pep talk. The girl nodded her head. She felt increasingly more comfortable around this man who was her fiancé. She even blushed a little. She had never felt so cared for. It made her feel warm and tingly inside. Naruto leaned closer to her and brushed his lips over hers as he kissed her softly. She wrapped her arms around his neck as she blushed softly. She had never been kissed because in Kunoichi people were too afraid of her. She pressed herself close to Na, giving into the moment. She slowly broke away from the kiss and looked to the ground. She had never experienced a kiss, and that was her first kiss. Na, that was so wonderful. She looked longingly into Naruto's eyes, finding the acceptance that she had wanted for so many years. She snuggled close, resting her head on Naruto's chest, she feeling safe around him. His words had managed to convince her she didn't have to go through with her mission. The way her heart was racing anymore when she was around the blonde convinced her that she couldn't do it. The truth was she had fallen for him. He acknowledged her. It was what she always needed, was to just be acknowledged as a person and not as a tool. Na was someone she could rely on, someone who could make her feel like a person. Na caressed her cheek and smiled warmly at her. He was always one to put the needs of others before his own. This was fundamentally what made him a prime candidate for Hokage. He was never the kind to be selfish or put his needs before others. This was the primary factor that made him popular with the girls. As if on cue, the moment was ruined and Anko descended from above and dragged Na away, taking him back to her lair to do Kami knows what with Na. One thing that could be said about that was, may there be mercy on his soul, for it was rumored Anko was really in need of a man. No one would be seeing Naruto for a while, but it seemed Kami hadn't truly forsaken Naruto today. Kurenai rushed forward and tackled Anko to the ground before trying to pull Naruto off towards her home. As if on cue, the other girls arrived. Gar was no longer planning to interfere. Never before in the history of girls loving Naruto has there been a spectacle such as this. Ha said into a microphone at a table off to the side. Na's sweat dropped at this because it was frankly annoying. I agree. It all started back in Argenan days, and the leading veteran of the sport, Hyuga Hinata, is still managing to give it her all. And is that your sister? Shino commented as the two were watching the all-out brawl that erupted. It made the bouquet toss look docile. Hinata jumped, building ledge, diving straight at Naruto, ready to drag him away. Before she could get away, Sakura threw a punch which Hinata knocked away with ease. Yes, that is my sister. She is a rookie to the sport. It seems as she is making the biggest mistake a rookie can make, Car exclaimed, watching his sister made an attempt to get Naruto away from Hinata and Sakura. The three girls entered into more serious hand-to-hand combat as Naruto crawled across the ground in an attempt to get away. Na had almost crawled away when Tuya started glowering down at him. He laughed in fear and tried to run away, but the redhead grabbed him by the collar of his shirt. She was dragging Na away virtually unchallenged until a girl with glasses blocked her path. Oh. Come on, give me a break. Na shouted in anger as Karen seemed insistent on stopping Tuya from getting away with Na. Look, you better not be getting in the way of me and Na getting married, because I'm not giving birth to a bastard. Tuya shouted angrily, clenching her fist. Of course, all the girls in the vicinity blanched and stepped back. She was only a few days into her pregnancy and she was already trying to kill people. Maybe that was just normal. Maybe the hormones haven't started going all out of whack yet. You got a problem with that. It's not like you're going to have a baby in an hour. The girl responded before adjusting her glasses. This was none other than Karen, a former experiment of Orochimaru that Sasaki had brought back to the village. She was a bit unstable in all honesty, but as Naruto liked to put it, when Ino wasn't around, she was hot. Excuse me. Na tried to get the fighting to stop, but his calls were drowned out by the bickering of the women. What is it, Na? The two girls fighting over him in his vicinity snapped angrily at him. The classic women snapping at the guy they're fighting over. Do I get a say in this at all? I am, after all, the father of the baby, and I thought you liked Sasake or something, Karen. Na sheepishly said as he scratched his cheek in timidness of the crazy ladies. I did, but Karen took her glasses off and smirked, pulling Naruto's head against her chest, causing the blonde to turn bright red. I decided I like you much more, Naruto-kun. You are so strong and you care. She then ran her fingers through the blonde's hair, causing him to stammer. She then began to rub her chest against her face, grinning darkly, completely ignoring her competition. Naruto-kun, I would love for you to come over to my place for dinner tonight. So, please say yes. She then pouted. This caused Naruto to immediately cave in as he nodded his head. Ka, what did we just witness? Shino asked as he and Ka continued their observations from the sidelines as self-proclaimed play-by-play announcers. That was Karen's patented seduction technique. Let's go to the video playback. Before they could do such, Tamari knocked the two away with her fan. Her eye twitching in anger. Nah, you lucky son of a bit. Before Ka could finish, he and Shino disappeared into the horizon. How dare that, all of the other girls shouted in anger. But Naruto, having learned in his years of experience in dealing with Ino, knew it was time to run. So he jumped to his feet and grabbed hold of Tuya's hand, pulling her away so they could take care of her problem. He wasn't about to be hit over the head by her. Nah. What the Tuya yelled at Na, ready to smack him across the back of the head. He could have at least given her warning. But Naruto didn't show any fear of her and kept leading her towards the Hokage Tower for a quickie wedding since he didn't figure Tuya was big on ceremonies. We're getting married. That's what he realized all too late, that he wasn't making much sense, but he didn't care. He stopped for a moment and rubbed his temples. Look, Tuya-chan, you want to get married, right? We're going to get married. I want to avoid any further insane battles royale. Frankly, it stopped being funny 3 chapters ago. Chapters. What the air are you talking about? Tuya's eye twitched as she raised her hand up to smack the father of the child she was expecting. Calm down. We're getting a quickie wedding. Na casually said, his hands raised in defense. He didn't want the girl to hit him over the head. He saw the blood vein throbbing in her neck and sighed softly as he heard the sounds and approaching thwack, but found his ear grasped and twisted, causing him to shout out in pain. He felt like he was being treated like a womanizer. Well, he technically was. Oh, isn't that just sweet? We can tell the kid one day that the reason why we're together is you knocked me up and we got married so he wouldn't be a bastard. Aren't you just romantic? And we can tell them that you were already married and that on our wedding night you were on a date with a who came onto you like a drunk prom date. Tuya was going into a long rant and Na knew he wasn't going anywhere for a while. Luckily, he had a candy bar, so he sat down and began to eat his candy bar while Tuya continued to rant. Na was doing quite the good job blocking out her complaining. It was like he had some experience with it. I love it. It will give the kid wonderful emotional scars. Every kid needs some, just not to the degree that whiny Uchiha, has. The redhead smirked and pulled Na in the direction of the Hokage Tower. She was all for the plan. Naruto's eye once more twitched in shock. This girl was crazy. Very, very crazy. Moments later. Okay. You're now husband and wife. Here's your marriage license. Handed over the paper to the two and smiled. Ought to be young and in lust, was her only thought about it as she looked at the two in front of her. It would seem her plan to get Naruto to reproduce was already working since she heard the circumstances. Alright, it's done. Try not to be out with bimbos all night long, or I will convince your other wife that we should make you help us redecorate the mansion without cage bunch. The in itself was a torture no man should have to endure. The frilliness and the girliness would drive any straight man sane. Sai probably thrived in that environment, and that was no generalization. People had seen C's bedroom, and the memory of it made Na cringe. Yes, dear. Naruto was once again defeated by a woman, proving that he will be the most whipped man in Konoha since Naru Shikaku. He was simply put doomed. Doomed is Kakashi if he ran out of. He might actually have to interact with a woman if that happened. It's just a dinner. What could possibly go wrong? Tuya and Shun, who was the witness, all narrowed their eyes slightly at Na. They couldn't believe he was that gullible. It wasn't so much that Karen was it was that she always got what she wanted. He right. Well, I gotta go then, Na said as he rubbed the back of his head. He laughed nervously before bolting out the door. I was twitching. She had no idea what kind of monster she had created. She was turning Naruto into a womanizer. That's your dream boat running off on another date. Shizune, doesn't that make you proud? Had to tease her apprentice. It was the perfect setup and it garnered a response as Shizune's eye twitched. This caused Sununit to snicker with pleasure at the infuriation of her assistant. Later at Karen's apartment, Naruto knocked at the door. He suddenly got this chill that ran down his spine. He felt the sense of impending doom like he had whenever Ino and Sakura were about to start fighting. Come in, Karen called from inside, and Naruto opened the door and walked in. He looked about until he finally found her. Karen used her feminine charm to get what she wants. But it would seem that what she wanted was Na because she was standing coyly off to the side in a black dress. Na, seeing this, pinched his nose since he felt a nosebleed coming on. Impending doom indeed. Of all the girls who could make him dinner, it had to be this one. A girl that made Tamari and Ino look homely. It must be the glasses. It was statistically proven girls with glasses were cute. Are you okay, Naruto? Karen asked as she set a hand on his cheek, causing him to stammer some. Good, because I made ramen special for you. At the mention of ramen, he didn't care what angle she was working. He was essentially a prostitute when it came to ramen. Have an ugly daughter that needed a date. Throw in some ramen and he would do it. Na sped to the table and sat down. Excellent. My plan is working. Soon Na won't be able to resist my charms. Unlike that obviously gay Sashake, no straight man can resist me. Karen was mentally declaring the hopes of her victory. Na was falling right into the obvious trap set by the devious Karen. There had to be a reason why Sasaki stayed away from her. Obviously, Na had to think for a moment what was more important, loyalty to the marriages, a ramen cooked by a femme fatale. If you don't know the answer, you definitely don't know Na. It was the ramen. Sometime later, Naruto leaned back in his chair, satisfied with all he had devoured. Karen just stared in shock that he had eaten everything that she cooked. She smirked. Now was the time for her to spring into action and make Naruto hers. She walked over to him and leaned close to his ear and smirked again and whispered in a husky voice, I hope you saved room for dessert. She then wrapped her arms around his neck. Sure. What's for dessert? Na was once again proving how his libido came after his appetite. It was slowly coming to his realization that wasn't what she meant. What let him know what she meant was when she took her glasses off and set them on the table, a telltale sign she was going seduction mode. And then his realizations would catalyze when her lips brushed over his suddenly. Then he felt the kiss deepen. Na was giving in to his baser instincts and wrapped his arms around her. He was unable to resist her any longer. Karen slowly sat on Naruto's lap. She broke away from the kiss for a moment. She nuzzled her face into his neck. Narok__, I have a special surprise for you, she slightly said as she hopped off his lap and took him by the hand, leading him to her bedroom. Na wasn't about to fight it. Karen was one of those girls you just couldn't say no to. She was like a beautiful goddess to Na. Na pulled the woman into his arms. You know, with that messy black hair of yours. You're the most irresistible woman in the village, he softly said before kissing her deeply, not giving her a chance to respond. He pushed her down onto her bed and crawled onto her with a sly grin on his face. She blushed and let loose a squeak. I unleashed a wild animal, didn't I? She asked, coyly, getting a nod from Na. She leaned her head up to kiss him again. Hours would pass and the two were now laying tangled in one another's limbs. Na was breathing heavily, as was Karen. I might be stuck on redecorating duty, but that was totally worth it. Na said with a cheerfully glimmer to his eyes. Karen's face was flush. She also had a look of satisfaction on her face. She was snuggling close to him, feeling quite happily. I see you are the man for me, Naruto. You have enough stamina for me. I don't know how many times we did it, but I think I lost count around the 8th time, she smirked as she looked at her ravaged room. Yes, it was true. The two didn't relegate themselves to staying on the bed. They had their fun all over the room and apartment. So, when will you ask me to marry you? She smirked since her plan had come full circle. She got Na into bed. What? Naruto's eye twitched. That was definitely a mood killer. That's when Karen put on a pair of glasses and smirked. Naruto's eyes rolled back for a moment. There was nothing more potent than a girl with glasses. Girls with glasses had a power over guys. Na was no longer in a twitchy mood due to seeing Karen put her glasses on. You ready for round 2? She huskily said as she at Naruto's neck. He felt that feeling of dread go down his spine again. Oh boy. I can tell this will just be one of those days. And I didn't get to sleep yet. Maybe if I can get some food and coffee. Na wed as he looked at the ceiling. He needed some coffee and some food if she expected him to do that again. He wondered why she suddenly became so fond of him. It was unsettling. Maybe her biological clock started ticking. Okay, but then you got to be ready for round 2. She grinned darkly, causing Naruto to freeze a bit. He was a dead man. He felt like she was using him like a slave. Maybe she wanted babies or something. Naruto thought to himself it was odd that she was going to such lengths. He, if you would pardon the pun, came, he saw, and he conquered several times last night. Yet across the village at the Uzumaki mansion. I am going to kill him. Ino twitched with anger since Naruto never came home last night. She was about ready to kill her husband for this. Tuya was of course in the same boat. She was going to kill him for being gone all night. When she specifically told him not to be out all night with bimbos. If Naruto knew what was good for him, he wouldn't come home today. But this was Na we were talking about. He always went into the heart of danger. So guys, what do you think about this Naruto story? Tell me your opinion in the comments. And if you want more Naruto what if stories, make sure to subscribe to Universe of Naruto. Thanks for watching.